I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Stephen Corwin, who's President and Chief Executive Officer of the NewYork-Presbyterian, where he oversees one of the nation's largest, most comprehensive healthcare delivery networks that provides exceptional care to patients across six campus academic medical center, a regional hospital network, and physician groups. Since joining NewYork-Presbyterian in 1979, Dr. Corwin, a cardiologist and internist, has led numerous strategic initiatives, including the launch of the NYP On Demand, a digital suite of health services, the development of the David H. Health Center, a world-class ambulatory care center, the implementation of a Respect Credo, strengthening physician-institutional relationships, and increased focus on quality. He obtained his undergraduate and medical degrees from Northwestern University, graduating summa cum laude and with Alpha Omega Alpha honors. He completed both his internal medicine residency and cardiology training at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center. Steve joined the NewYork-Presbyterian team in 1979. In addition to being a member of the Economic Club of New York, he's a member of the Board of Directors of the Greater New York Hospital Association and serving as its president beginning in June of 2016. He's a member of the Governing Council of Healthcare Systems at the American Hospital Association. He's also a fellow at the New York Academy of Medicine, a member of the Association of American Medical Colleges, Council of Teaching Hospitals Administrative Board, a member of the Health Management Academy, a member of the Advisory Board for the Morgan Stanley Institute for Sustainable Investing. He's received numerous awards and honors, including the Hope and Heroes Award for promoting excellence in pediatric oncology and the VHA Award for clinical quality for the design and implementation of an emergency department protocol for chest pain diagnosis and treatment. And that's actually an abbreviated version of this incredible biography. We're pleased to welcome as our interviewer this morning, Melanie Evans, who's a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, covering hospitals and the practice of medicine. Dr. Corwin and Melanie will save the last 15 minutes, as is our tradition, to take questions from the audience, with the first question coming from the Economic Club of New York fellow, Trin, who we have in the room, one of 27 fellows in our new fellows program. As a reminder for everyone, this entire program, including the questions from our members and their guests, is on the record, and it's being carried live on Facebook. As always, we'll conclude promptly at 9. With no further delay, Steve and Melanie, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you for having us here today. My mother would have a longer introduction, but thank you for it. I appreciate it. So.
Do we need a microphone?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Definitely.
That's hot. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. So we're going to talk about technology today, but we're also talking about healthcare. So healthcare costs are pressing and unrelenting concern for businesses and households and state and federal government. It seems that technology has the potential to reduce those costs, but also to increase them. Do you agree?
I do, and let me sort of parse this in a couple of different ways. The first is, if you look at a major hospital system like mine, 60% of our expense is labor expense. So in order to get the cost structure of a hospital system down, you have to look at labor expense as a key issue. And traditionally, hospitals have been looked at as low productivity industries. So a nurse taking care of a sick patient is the same ratio as it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. The environmental service workers are about the same ratios as they were 10 or 20 years ago. So one of the issues for us is in this world of disruptive technology, if artificial intelligence, machine learning, and a variety of tools, can you become more efficient, can you become more productive, and can you therefore lower your costs and lower the cost of care? We believe that in combination with telemedicine can dramatically reduce the cost of care, and if it doesn't, then I think that it will be a failed experiment. But I really believe that we will be disrupted by this and it reduces the cost of care. What Melanie also referred to is there are a lot of innovations that cost money, and innovation comes with a price. So whether it's a new pharmaceutical that treats hepatitis C, or whether it's a new T-cell therapy for certain cancers, these are very expensive therapies. Proton therapy for cancer, there's a proton center going up on 127th Street and 3rd Avenue. That's a $200 million facility. So there are many things on the technology side that will push up the cost of care, because innovation tends to push up the cost of care and healthcare. So you have countervailing forces there.
You mentioned telemedicine. You've introduced virtual visits from everything from primary care, home visits, to telemedicine, virtual visits in the emergency room. Are these lower cost alternatives to in-person? And if they are they lower cost to the institution, to the payer, to the patient?
Well, I think they are lower cost alternatives, and I think, let me just sort of level set this. Our feeling behind this was that with virtualization or the use of the internet, that you would have a similar situation in hospitals and hospital systems as you had in retail. And that the use of the internet and virtual visits was going to dramatically change healthcare. And if you follow the retail analogy, our feeling has been strategically that you have bricks and mortar, which in our case are hospital buildings, ambulatory buildings, hospital buildings, in the retail case it's stores. You wrap around that a whole suite of virtual services, and then you wrap around that really the best customer service and patient service you possibly can. So strategically, that's the way that we think it's going to go. And that if we just stuck with a bricks and mortar approach, that was not going to be effective for us. And having said that, we think that telemedicine affords an opportunity for lower cost. That the visits will be less costly than a physician visit. That we can offload our emergency departments. That we can provide more effective and timely care. But think about a couple of different things. In the emergency room setting, we can take care of an urgent care visit in 25 minutes, whereas ordinarily that would be a 2-hour turnaround time. Psychiatrists are very difficult to obtain, especially in an emergency room setting, and especially for children and adolescents. So we only have about 6,000 child and adolescent psychiatrists in the country. We can offer child and adolescent psychiatric services to all of our school-based clinics. We can have one psychiatrist cover 10 school-based clinics. You can't do that in a physical world. Now think about a relative or a friend who has a condition like congestive heart failure. Mother, son, daughter has to take off the day from work to get the patient to the doctor's office. It's $45 for parking. You see the physician in about 20 minutes. The physician spends about 5 or 6 minutes dealing with the core of the problem, and then a lot of it is making another appointment, getting laboratory tests, getting dressed and undressed. Imagine if you could do that visit in the patient's home. Well, we can do that now. And imagine if the physician can spend the key medical part of the visit, 6 or 7, 8 minutes, and then a pharmacist, a social worker, a nutritionist, via telemedicine can deal with the rest of the patient in a holistic way. So not only do we think it's less costly and the physicians will be reimbursed less, we think that this scales and that the patient care will be better, higher quality and lower cost.
You mentioned labor costs as a significant expense in healthcare inside of hospitals. So can technology replace jobs that are done in hospitals today in a way that may lower that labor expense?
I think we're struggling with this as a society. So whether you're a techno-pessimist or techno-optimist, do jobs go away with the application of artificial intelligence, machine learning? I think the answer to that is they do. They will be replaced by different jobs and new jobs. Whether there's a net loss or gain, I'm not smart enough to say. But in the healthcare setting, I think there's going to be a net loss, and I'm concerned about that. So we're already starting to figure out what our labor force will look like in 3 or 4 years to avoid a situation where we have to dramatically lay off people. That being said, I'll give you a perfect example. And you see this in other industries. So remember, this is not just about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and diagnosis and treatment of disease. Robotic process automation for revenue cycle is a key thing that's happening now. So as an example of that, we have instituted, we have centralized timekeeping. That's for all of our employees to monitor time at work and overtime, et cetera. We had 120 people do that for our 45,000 employees. We now have 20 doing it. Robotic process automation can do insurance clearances in about 2 minutes. A very productive person right now in our finance department can do 70 insurance clearances a day. So you can do insurance clearance in 2 minutes, 24/7, 365. No sick time, no vacation time. That's going to be hundreds of jobs. Where do those jobs go? So I think that these things are already upon us. We are employing robotic tools for cleaning. So we have robots in our new buildings that are cleaning robots. These are things that you're seeing in other industries, and our industry is no exception. So I think it's going to reduce costs not only.
What about the use of technology in the practice of medicine? So are there basic decisions made by a physician or nurse that could be settled using technology, using an algorithm, for example? Is that something you've explored? And if so, what does it look like?
Well, the answer to that is yes. I think that you will have AI-aided diagnosis. So there are some good examples out in the marketplace. AI-aided diagnosis of dermatologic lesions. You have skin cancer, you have a melanoma. That's a perfect example. I think we're getting there in radiology readings. So anything that involves pattern recognition, similar to facial recognition, I think you're going to see software algorithms that will apply and will aid humans in the diagnosis. I do think that we have to be careful as we apply these algorithms to make sure that we're not inserting our own biases in these algorithms, and that is a key concern of ours. So for example, we use an AI machine learning algorithm to help reduce the length of stay of somebody in the hospital. It can identify obstacles to somebody leaving the institution. As you explore that, is there a bias against non-English speaking patients? Is there a bias against people of color? You know, sometimes you don't know how the algorithms actually reach their solution, and so that is of concern. But I do think that you will see the first applications of this in terms of medical diagnosis on things that rely on integer pattern recognition, pathology slides, radiology, dermatology. We already use artificial intelligence on things like interpreting a blood slide. So on a blood slide, white blood counts are important, and the white blood cells have 3 or 4 different types. These AI algorithms can actually determine which type of white blood cell is present on the smear, and then somebody overreads that. So it dramatically reduces the number of people you have to read these things. So again, it deals with labor, and it also deals with, can you reach a right diagnosis, and can you have AI tools that assist somebody in making a diagnosis?
So the next question then becomes, can technology answer questions that doctors and nurses cannot? So is it possible that algorithms may do a better job of predicting which patients, I guess the course of a patient's, the trajectory of a patient's illness. I don't know if that is work that you're developing, and if so, could you talk a little bit about how?
So the question really gets to, can you develop new insights or insights that you might not have had? And I think the answer to that is yes. So let's take a look at what Google did with Deepmind. So the game Go was felt to be a game that would be very difficult for a computer to simulate. By loading tremendous amounts of Go games into Google Deepmind, the Deepmind algorithm was able to beat the world's most proficient Go players, which people thought was going to be quite a while in coming. More interestingly to me, at least, was the next experiment was if you just gave the learning algorithm the rules of the game, the rules of Go, what would happen? And what happened was that with those rules, the machine would play against itself and actually develop its own strategies and came up with some insights that the most proficient Go players didn't have. So I think the same thing is going to apply in artificial intelligence, machine learning in terms of diagnosis and treatment. I do think right now there are prompters with the right data inputs. You can predict things that somebody might be slower to predict, trends that may yield to a bad outcome, et cetera. We see this in the ICU setting. But ultimately, I think you can clearly see that there may be things that come up with new insights into disease. And then the question becomes, is that insight valid or not? I still think we're a ways away from removing human control from ultimately making the diagnosis.
You discussed AI a bit this morning, and it's a term that gets used frequently. And at least as a healthcare reporter, not a tech reporter, it's a term that I think bears defining. So when you talk about AI, what type of capability are you describing? And how far along are the tools in healthcare to kind of meeting the potential promise of artificial intelligence?
Well, I still think we're a ways away. I think that when you deal with complex diagnoses, the essence of AI, to me, is you take large amounts of data, and it's got to be curated data, so the data's got to be good. You take large amounts of data, you have enormous computing power now. You put that with some of the neural networks, and you come up with the ability to make predictions, predictive analytics. And that's the essence of this, or diagnostic. If the data is not good, it's difficult to come up with these answers. And one of the issues, for example, with cancer diagnosis is what you want to do is correlate somebody's phenotype, what do they actually have, versus the genotypic information that you can get from doing genomic screening. The problem heretofore has been that the phenotypic information, what does the person have, is not that readily available. If you just cull that information from the electronic record, it is not sufficient. It is not sufficiently accurate. And so you have to do a lot of curating of the information in order to input the information to get these associations between what the person has and what the genotypic information is. So I still think on some of these more complicated things, we're a ways away. I actually think that, it's inexorable. It will happen. It's going to develop. Our computing power increases. The ability to do these algorithms increases. So I think that from my standpoint, a hospital system like ours has to be at the forefront of that. I don't see how you can avoid this wave coming.
So for a hospital system like yours, does that mean then that you build it in-house? Does this become sort of like as essential as other sort of classic functions of a hospital, or is it something, do you build or you buy?
I think you buy, but I think you buy with the notion that you have people in-house that are capable from the standpoint of data science, people in-house that are capable of discerning what's good to buy and what's not good to buy and what has applicability or not. So we built that capability in-house. We're not going to try to build this on our own. I think you do have to buy, and you have to buy as any consumer would buy, with knowledge that you have people that can advise you. I certainly am not somebody that is technologically proficient in terms of really understanding these algorithms, but I think we've hired good people to do that. One of the concerns that I have on this is that you really will separate have hospital systems from have not hospital systems, because you have to invest a lot of money, time, and energy into these things. And we have to be careful that we don't create further disparities in healthcare, especially for underserved communities, by applying these tools.
So, as you have sort of scouted out your options, are you working with anybody interesting? Are you testing any sort of products in development that might be sort of a new breakthrough in either sort of managing the operations or managing the care of the patients?
We are, I'm not at liberty to mention the companies, but I think that our philosophy on this has been to co-develop things with companies that we're interested in. So we do spend time in Silicon Valley. We do look particularly at companies that we think can apply a solution for a problem that we have. We want to align it with what we think our strategic goals are, and our goals are in patient care. And we think we have something to offer in terms of the co-development of some of these tools. So that's really where we focus. What I've not wanted to do is get into the venture capital investment business. There are plenty of people who are far smarter than we are, but I did want to get involved with companies that we thought could bring real value to patient care.
You mentioned that AI requires a lot of data and good data. So what data does a hospital have today, and where do you get it?
Well, hospitals are data factories, and one of the reasons that we're such rich targets for people that want to do nefarious things, cyber crimes, is we have a lot of information. We have a lot of patient information, clinical information from things like x-rays, all the diagnostic tests, all the laboratory tests, everything that's in the electronic record. We have people's financial information because they have to pay bills, we have their insurance information, so we are a treasure trove of information. Using that information is important for us, but also we have to recognize we have some fundamental obligations. One, we have to protect our information from either internal bad actors or external bad actors. Two, we have to protect the privacy of everybody's information, and we are now going through that as a country. I personally think the European GDPR is the correct direction for us to go. I think that we are too loose in terms of privacy and how your information can be used. As my father used to tell me, nothing in this world is free, and your data on Facebook clearly is not free. So these things occupy us tremendously, and protecting our patients' information, I think, is one of the sacrosanct obligations that we have.
That's an excellent segue to my next question, which is how do you do that? Is it, whack-a-mole seems like an understatement, right? That you're sort of getting kind of threats coming from all directions. How do you invest as a system, particularly given that the hospital itself is increasingly networked and the people within it are increasingly networked? How do you build up an adequate defense?
Well, you have to build up a capability, and that involves investing money. So healthcare organizations typically have invested 3 to 6% of their IT dollars in cybersecurity. Banks are in the 10 to 12% range. We're now in the 10 to 12% range. I feel very strongly about this for the reasons that I mentioned before. So that's the first thing. 40 years ago, we had 5 people doing cybersecurity. Today, we have 55 people doing cybersecurity. 4 years ago, we had $3 million worth of cybersecurity insurance. We now have $125 million worth of cybersecurity insurance. The electronic systems that we have are our lifeblood. If they go down, that is really creates a problem for us. So, the city of Atlanta, you saw, had weeks worth of a problem with a cyber attack. Erie County Medical Center had weeks worth of a problem being shut down by a denial of service attack. So I meet with our chief security officer, information security officer, with counsel and with the chief operating officer and the chief information officer every other week. And we look at what the threat levels are, what the new attacks are. We look at our own metrics in terms of things that are mundane but important, like server patches and how current we are on server patches, dual factor identification, a range of things that have to be put in place to make sure that our data is secure. And I worry about this all the time, and we should. And I was telling Melanie the other day, 91% of the emails that come into our organization are rejected as either spam or malicious or in some way problematic. 91%. And email now is the most currently favored vector of attack. And so it's a big deal, and we have to pay a lot of attention to it. And these are state actors, these are state actor proxies, these are just bad guys. There's a lot there, and we would be brought to our knees with a significant attack that was successful. So it's something that I worry about all the time. As much as I worry about the physical security of our facilities, I worry about this.
So, on that same subject, I wanted to talk about medical devices because everything from CT scans to infusion pumps are now networked. It's an interesting area because of you can sort of think of it as like there's it crosses multiple essentially jurisdictions,
Yes.
for lack of a better word. So you've got the devices that run on what may be off-the-shelf software, operating systems. Those operating systems may sort of at a certain point no longer be supported by the companies that develop them. You've got products, the medical devices themselves, and the companies that manufacture those products develop the patches, but it's the hospital themselves that are responsible for installing the patch, which can be disruptive. And so how do you, this is an area of, particularly, I think it was after WannaCry. It was a kind of area of discussion. So how do you evaluate the cybersecurity attributes of medical devices as you purchase them?
Well, we will not. About a year and a half ago, we initiated a policy where if our information security people felt that a device had software that was not requisitely secure, that we would not buy it. So we recently had a situation where we did not buy a particular product because it was not secure. The problem is that, and we and some other institutions in the country, along with leading device manufacturers, are pushing the following notion. You don't know whether a device is operating correctly or incorrectly in the internet environment unless you fingerprinted the device beforehand. So A, we think that all the software devices should have a bill of particulars. This is what's in the device. And B, this is how it operates when it operates normally. So that when it is in the system, if it's operating abnormally, you can detect that, because we currently can't. And so we've been pushing that, and I think FDA will help, and I think the major device manufacturers will help. This is important for all of us. And as you know, with the Internet of Things, if you can co-opt a device or a set of devices, you can create denial of service attacks, you can create a range of things that are highly problematic. And so you're only as strong as your weakest link. So we think that medical devices, the Internet of Things, is a specific threat, and that fingerprinting these devices, having a national standard around fingerprinting, and therefore how does the device act when it's normal or abnormal is critical. What we do now is, if somebody won't give us the software bill of particulars, and we're concerned about security, we just won't buy it. And unless there's an overriding reason that this is the only product in the marketplace, and somebody makes a compelling case to me, if the Chief Information Security Officer says this is a dangerous device for us to put in place, we will not do it.
So for those who aren't familiar, could you describe what bill of particulars is, and why is it so hard to get? I mean, why would somebody not hand it over? A manufacturer?
I don't know why they wouldn't hand it over. I think that they all should. I think that it's basically listing the software components and how the system should operate. And so the best way that I can describe it, and I'm certainly not a technophile, is that you're fingerprinting the device. You know what the device does. I think the large manufacturers understand this and want to help. I think some of the smaller manufacturers may have some issues with it. And as Melanie pointed out, ultimately, we have the liability if the software patch is not put in place. And the company can say, we won't, the software patch should be in place, and it can take a while for them to give you the patch. So we have to have a much more robust system. And we actually think that it should be a B2B partnership. We think that everyone has the same ultimate goals in terms of patient safety. We don't think it should be controversial at all, to be honest with you.
You mentioned the FDA, so have you had discussions with the FDA about the fingerprinting, and are you talking about regulation or kind of an industry voluntary effort? And is regulation necessary?
I think the FDA can be helpful, and I think that there's, not all regulation is bad, but I do think most of this should be a voluntary set of standards that are adopted and that the FDA promotes. We've had the discussions with the FDA, they've been very constructive, and I think that current chair of the FDA is forward-thinking, and I have great respect for Dr. Gottlieb. So I think we're going to make progress on this issue.
One last question about devices, because this came up at a recent event that I attended, having again to do with the underlying sort of software components of medical devices. It's not a new proposal, but there was a discussion, just given that some of these are kind of capital-intensive purchases, that maybe there could be a sort of at the federal level something along the lines of a cash for clunkers, but for medical devices. And I was interested in your response to that kind of a proposal.
It's a new one for me. We'd be happy to hand in a lot of our older medical devices that we could get rebates for them. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I do think, on a more serious note, that there is an obligation that device manufacturers have to make sure that their devices are safe within the context of a connected universe, and we talked about that. There are many ways that bad actors can get into the system, and that's one of the areas. So I would prefer not to do cash for clunkers. I would prefer to have an industry standard that makes sense in terms of protecting everybody.
All right, so talking about medical equipment brings me to the capital purchases, which brings me to purchasing. I'm just working my way towards Amazon with this question. So NewYork-Presbyterian worked with Amazon in the hospital supply chain. Could you describe for us the work that you did and why you got involved?
Our supply chain is over $1 billion, and so many of you are involved with or have been involved with the manufacturing industry. So part of the issue for us is what do you purchase at what price? Part of the issue is from purchase to loading time, And then part of the issue is what's the inventory process within the institution. And we're interested in all of that. We think that the Internet of Things, meaning sensorization, if you will, affords us the ability to do stochastic inventory control, and that's been tried at Boeing, it's been tried at Caterpillar. We think that that is something that we'd like to do because we have huge inventories of a variety of things, and if you're in charge of the inventory for the operating room, the last thing that you want is to run out of something when somebody's having an operation. So the inventory levels are going to be higher unless you have some way of monitoring that. So we're very interested in the whole supply chain. We were particularly interested with Amazon as to whether, given their logistics proficiency, whether or not they could provide us some help in that. They were interested at the time in seeing whether or not they could help us with purchasing products. We had a brief experience with them and found that our ability to get pricing was better than theirs, at least at this point in time. So we've not used them for that. So it was a failed experiment. I do think that, you know, any business that Amazon is in, one has to worry about being a competitor in that business. It's one of the world's great companies. So if they are intent on doing B2B and intent on providing product pricing, etc., I would not doubt them. Having said that, their initial foray with us did not result in any savings for us.
Well, so then do you continue to have conversations with them about what didn't work with an eye toward developing or sort of iterating a new model?
Yeah, I think you have to. I guess tying the whole discussion today together, we have to find every way we possibly can to reduce costs without affecting patient care. So the typical way that with a blunt instrument that you would reduce cost is you ration care. And I think that we as a society do not want to do that. I would not advocate doing that. But leading a hospital system, I have a responsibility to try to reduce the cost of care. So if Amazon or any other company can help you reduce the cost of care, yeah, you have to have those discussions. And they've been successful in just about everything that they've done. If they put their mind to it, they're going to be successful here. So I am not daunted by having an initial failure. I think that there are probably other things that we can do with them or others that will yield the savings that we want.
How are we in time?
Good. 2 more questions.
All right, great. Good. Perfect. So, is technology the solution to opaque pricing in healthcare?
No. Pricing in healthcare is as Byzantine as you can possibly make it, and it's for a whole host of reasons. The first is, what's the price depends on who you are. If you're a Medicaid patient, it's different than if you're a Medicare patient, it's different than if you're a commercially insured patient. If you're a commercially insured patient, the price you pay out of pocket may be different than something else, depending on which plan within the insurance company you're in. The charge master, which was mandated by Medicare, is a rough guide to what cost is and charges, and then everyone bases their charges off that charge master. So it is extremely Byzantine. It's grown up over a long period of time, and I don't think technology will elucidate it. But having said that, everyone wants affordable health care. I think that affordability, you have to define it in a number of different ways. The first is it affordable to me as a patient? What's my out-of-pocket expense? Am I on a high deductible plan? Am I on a low deductible plan? What is this going to cost me? The second is it affordable to the country? That's a different question than whether it's affordable to you as a consumer. The third is it affordable to the health system? So those health systems that are safety net hospitals taking care of mainly Medicaid patients don't find it affordable because they have difficulty generating any sort of margin. So I think the affordability question depends on the prison that you look through. So pricing and affordability are two sides of the same coin. I think we've got to get to affordability, but the short answer to your technology question is unless people understand this Byzantine charges and pricing, it's very difficult for technology to make an impact on it.
I was thinking about this sort of a corollary to the Amazon question, which is that in the Amazon market, you've got products in an open market with transparent prices, sort of competing for business. And I'm wondering if technology may sort of be able to crack that Byzantine system and in a way that would enable sort of transparent pricing. Other than this kind of I guess the multiple insurance products that sort of kind of dictate different prices. Are there other barriers to hospitals competing on price?
Well, it's a great question. I would say a couple of things. Just let's take a step back and look at the debate we're having over pharmaceutical pricing. So the first question with pharmaceutical pricing is, does the EU pay what the US pays? Does Indonesia pay what the EU pays? What is Canada paying? So that's the first set of issues. Second set of issues is what rebates are the pharmaceutical companies offering the various pharmacy benefit managers. The third issue is there generic competition, and how soon can generic competition come in, and will that lower the price? And you saw with what the President and Mr. Azar had put forth that it's extremely convoluted, and it's difficult to get at. So one situation would be, well, let Medicare negotiate drug prices. Another is, let's put direct pressure on the pharmaceutical companies to make sure that they're not charging more than the EU does. Third is, let's let the market take effect. I think that the same thing applies analogously to hospital pricing. Part of the issue is what's the mix that a particular hospital has. Part of it is what's the leverage that the hospital system has in terms of its pricing. On supply chain, you have general purchasing organizations that most hospitals use, which dictate the prices that they can pay. So I think that the Amazon approach of saying we're going to be an open marketplace for every device, it's going to be a difficult road to get there.
We are going to open it up for questions. Very interested in.
Our first question will be from our fellow.
Yes.
They can announce give their name and.
I'm connected to a wire, so I'll repeat your question.
Okay, I'll try to speak loud.
Okay.
I guess in this world of social media prevalence, could you comment on or talk about your social media strategy with respect to perhaps liability management or even marketing and brand?
The question was social media strategy concerning branding and liability and how to approach it. There's no question that in this very interconnected world, as doggedly as one tries to build up your reputation, it can be destroyed pretty quickly. One of the most recent examples that struck me was the example of what happened at Starbucks and how they responded to it. Now, Howard Schultz is he's a terrific guy, in my opinion, and runs a terrific company. And you saw how devastating that was in terms of the way that the company was perceived. I think they responded to it well, but that's one of the issues you have with the viral nature of how it connected in social media. So we look at that all the time, and we have people that monitor what perceptions are there of us on social media, and it's something that is, I think, important for any CEO in any business to keep track of. In terms of marketing, I think for hospitals it's a double-edged sword. I'm reluctant to say that, I think that our marketing strategy has been let the patients tell their own stories and then let the consumer make up their mind. I think it's a much better strategy than beating our chest and saying we're number one in this or number two in that. I think ultimately it comes down to the patient, and my value system is such that it's about whether the patient is well cared for. So I think there's a defensive side to social media and playing offense, but the liability issues are magnified tremendously by social media.
Yes, Bill Harmon. I wanted to just ask, there's been an awful lot of consolidation in the healthcare delivery system. Northwell, Mount Sinai, NYU, and Presbyterian as well. Are you convinced that there are economies of scale are being achieved? And is there a sort of standards and controls that have to be implemented in smaller hospitals that haven't had the advantages that you all have had over a long period of time? And how difficult is that? And do you see in the long term that that's going to be cost effective and greater delivery of quality health care?
So the question basically was, is the consolidation, where is the consolidation of the industry at this point, and will that consolidation yield fair fruit in terms of lowering costs? I think there's vertical consolidation, there's horizontal consolidation. The horizontal consolidation is hospitals acquiring hospitals, so we have done some of that, as has Northwell and NYU. I think there are positives and negatives to it, which I'll get into in a second. But there's also more vertical consolidation, and that's CVS Aetna. That is, Optum United, and the purchasing of a lot of medical practices and surgical care units. So I think that there is a lot of Cigna Express scripts. So I think that you're seeing upstream consolidation to try to get the patient in the more primary care or preventive stages, which I think should yield some benefit. I think that everything that we've talked about today is that you cannot get economies of scale unless you have size. And part of that is, we talked about cybersecurity. A small hospital, there's no way that they can do this. Purchasing cloud, you can't do that. The opponents of horizontal consolidation would say that it's price raising because you're charging the insurance companies more. I don't think it's that simple at all. I think that part of what we need to do in horizontal consolidation, and I'll talk about the New York area, is, Brooklyn is a borough that has as many denizens as the city of Chicago. It's as large as the city of Chicago. Queens is as large as the city of Houston. You got to have great hospitals. You got to be able to deliver great care to every neighborhood in New York. And part of our rationale around consolidating was just that. And the New Yorkers in the audience recognize that we have a crisis with the MTA, which is a key part of our infrastructure, a crisis with New York City Housing Authority, which is a key piece of the infrastructure. The last thing we need is a crisis in healthcare in terms of the healthcare infrastructure. And so part of what we need to do is make sure that we've got a strong healthcare infrastructure. When you have a borough as large as Brooklyn that needs great hospital care, that's something that I feel very strongly about. That's a positive of the horizontal consolidation, because we have the money that we can be able to put into Brooklyn. So we'll put $1 billion into the hospital that we have in Brooklyn, and we're probably putting $500 million into the hospital we have in Queens. And we think that's good for the citizens of New York.
My question has to do with the role of doctors going forward. You had talked about the role of artificial intelligence in imaging. a computer who's seen millions of images of a malignant biopsy or malignancies with confirmed biopsies can potentially be much more accurate than a doctor who's only seen a handful of malignancies. But if you apply the same logic to doctors and the potential for algorithms to give next steps, tests, if you will, based on symptoms, and that can potentially be very accurate and very effective from a cost standpoint, how do you see the role of doctors going forward?
So with all this artificial intelligence and machine learning, how do we see the role of doctors going forward? Well, let me say a couple of things. First, human beings have empathy, and algorithms don't. Human beings have curiosity, and algorithms don't. So I think that, and I like what Klaus Schwab has said at the World Economic Forum, is our values need to inform how we develop and use these tools. And I think that I view this as aiding humans and not replacing humans. I also think that these tools should rehumanize care as opposed to dehumanize care. So I want the doctor to be able to do what he or she does best and to use these tools to the best of their abilities. I think that these two things can marry effectively to provide better care, higher quality care, etc. Do I think we need doctors? Yes. An interesting question would be, are we going to need as many radiologists or as many pathologists? And I think the answer to that over time is going to be no, but I think we're still going to need a lot of doctors. But I would just remind us that what makes us human beings is our general intelligence and our ability to have empathy, curiosity, things that, at least at this point in time, these machine algorithms do not have. And the essence of medical care to me is the human-to-human connection and the ability of somebody to put trust in somebody. And I feel very strongly that one of my roles leading a hospital system is to provide our patients with the very best doctors. And we spend a lot of time thinking about that.
You describe your business as a data factory, and presumably with more vertical integration, you'll have more data. At what point will you know enough about me to sell me a direct subscription, and so that I wouldn't have to buy or go through an insurance plan? Could that solve some of the business pricing?
It's a good point. I think there are two pieces. I think that ultimately, I think everybody should have all their own information. I think it's your information, not my information. And I think that I've always been the advocate of you should have all your information electronically, and that should be, your record should be portable. So that's one aspect of that. The second thing is, how do we get to a point in this country of eliminating the insurance company as a middleman? I don't see that happening in the near future. Let me tell you why. I think that employer-based healthcare is the bulwark of this system. You have 165 million Americans on employer-based healthcare, and it's the driver, and it tends to be the rock of the system. And you have 75 million people on Medicaid, 75 million people on Medicare. So I think you're going to have those three components. I think the argument we've got to get to is, how do you get to universal coverage with a private-public partnership? And can we make it affordable for average Americans? And right now, if 40% of the country has difficulty writing a $200 check, we've got a problem, because healthcare is just not affordable for a lot of people. And that's why I felt that the Medicaid expansion was an important thing for us to do, and I still think it's important for us to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I just want to mention, we do have a couple of upcoming events, one of which is June 19th with William Blackfine, Chairman and CEO of Goldman. And with that, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, both of you.